Hey everyone, welcome to the last episode for tonight's Dan and Joe Sports Show. As always, I'm Dan.
And I'm Joe.
All right, Joe, this is our big championship game preview. It's all led to this. What's been a great college football season, full of a lot of epic upsets, teams making the playoff that were unexpected, Cincinnati and Michigan, and it all led to a very, very predictable championship game. And that's Alabama taking on Georgia. It's a repeat of what we saw in 2017 and a rematch of what we saw just a month ago in the SEC championship game. And Joe, before we break down the specifics of this rematch, let's look at how they each got there. Let's talk about Alabama first. I thought they came in and they had a great game plan and they stuck to it. They said to themselves, we're better than Cincinnati is in the trenches. We don't need Bryce Young to throw for 400 yards in this game. We're going to beat them with our defensive line and with our offensive line and with Brian Robinson. And I got to say, Joe, we talk a lot about, these players that have been there for a while opting out. There's not a lot of loyalty to your schools anymore. I got to say this, and, whenever I'm an Auburn fan, so when I give a lot of credit to an Alabama player, they really deserve it. I'm very impressed with Brian Robinson. He's a guy who's a fifth-year senior. He's an excellent running back. He had all kinds of opportunities, I'm sure, to transfer wherever he wanted to. And he never got to play that much in Alabama. He was a complete afterthought for 4 years up there in Tuscaloosa. And he's waited his time. And this year he got to be the featured back. And he's really made the most of it. And you could see when in the Auburn game he got injured, them not having him made a difference. You could see in their inability to run the ball that great against Georgia, the reason that Bryce Young did have to throw for 400 yards against them, it made a difference. And then in this game against Cincinnati, he was their offense. He rushed for over 200 yards. You felt like if they wanted to, maybe could have even gone as much as 300. And, I thought that was a great job of their defense, really shutting down Desmond Ritter. And then on the offensive side, they played ball control, and it really was almost like you were watching a 2011 Alabama team versus a 2021 one.
Yeah, that's really what it was. It was kind of the games, they used to win 10 or 11 years ago, to your point. And I think that, when you compare and contrast running back for Bama versus Cincinnati, it's kind of interesting with Jerome Ford. He's a guy that started at Alabama but didn't stick around, and transferred to Cincinnati. So kind of interesting with that team that they faced each other. And Alabama contained Ford pretty good. I think he had 75 rushing yards, but he never really broke free for a big run. I think his longest run of the day was probably like 10 to 15 yards, if that. And you saw, like you kind of said, with Alabama's offense, they chose not to attack Cincinnati's cornerbacks, who are pretty good. That they have one cornerback who actually might be like a top 20 pick this year. And so I thought the game plan for Alabama, it worked well with the matchup against Cincinnati. I also kind of thought Saban didn't want to show everything in their arsenal. I think, he was kind of holding back a little bit, knew that this is an opponent he didn't have to just play his best game against to win. And they're not just going to be, exhausted getting out of this matchup. And so it kind of played out, largely the way I think most people expected.
I think so too, Joe. And, I came away from that game really disappointed in Cincinnati. I didn't think Alabama played their best game by any means. And what I was most disappointed by was Alabama actually gave Cincinnati a lot of opportunities with short fields, with turnovers, with opportunities for them to cash it in and show like they belong to be there. And I hate to say it, but they look like they didn't belong.
Yeah, there were a lot of people, wondering what would have happened if Baylor or Oklahoma State were in that game, or even Notre Dame, been a lot different, or Ohio State. And I think that's certainly, a worthwhile point. Yeah, Cincinnati, they just didn't cash in on opportunities. And you just didn't see some of their best players like Ritter and Ford, or some of their defensive backs just have those key critical moments. And I think they had one interception on Bryce Young, but it was pretty much inconsequential the way the game played out. And so, yeah, I was really wanting Cincinnati to come out there and make a statement in the first quarter and kind of show that they could score with Bama. But instead, it just kind of started out with them just trading field goals for Alabama's touchdowns.
Exactly, Joe. They traded field goals and they never took any shots downfield, which I don't understand. I mean, when you're in that game and you're playing a team that's got better talent than you, They're going to be better than you at pretty much every position. You got to take some risks. And they never threw the ball downfield. You're not going to beat them by going 3 yards in a cloud of dust, by throwing 7-yard passes. You got to take some chances. And then Alabama throws an interception. And I think Cincinnati went 3 and out after that. They didn't capitalize. Alabama gave them short fields a bunch of times. They didn't do anything. And in my mind, that was why I was disappointed. That was the thing that in my mind showed they didn't deserve to be there, because good football teams take advantage of opportunities like that, even if it means that they only get one of them and it's a 27-14 game or something like that. They never took advantage of any of them. And I think Alabama played a C game and beat them by 21 points. And based on what I saw with Oklahoma State, with their spirited effort against Notre Dame, or what we saw with Baylor, the way they played against Ole Miss on defense, I definitely think that in hindsight, they were better football teams than Cincinnati was.
I think so too. And I think that, with a program like Cincinnati in this spot, in this opportunity, you expected some razzle dazzle. You kind of thought that Luke Fickell, would just kind of come out there with some Boise State-esque plays from back in the day with Chris Peterson against Oklahoma, but you just didn't have that in the playbook. And to me, Dan, just the whole game felt kind of flat, like the atmosphere, everything. It just felt kind of flat.
Yeah, I agree. It was. It just wasn't a very spirited effort. Now, Joe, let's look across. Like I said, I was impressed with Alabama, and especially impressed with their defense, which, hey, that's all in Alabama's defense, too, for playing a great game and not allowing them to capitalize off that. But you still would have liked to have seen it. But a spirited effort is what Georgia did. Georgia dominated Michigan from the get-go. And I picked Michigan to win on this show because I thought that Georgia mentally was not ready to recover what was a soul-crushing defeat against Alabama and come back and play a great game. And not only did they recover, they played their best game of the season and dismantled what I thought was a confident, savvy, and very talented Michigan team. And that was actually more of a beatdown than maybe even the Alabama-Cincinnati game was, which is why I think Georgia comes into this game as the favorite again, despite what happened a month ago in Atlanta.
Yeah, we're just rewriting narratives all over the place. We have the narrative all season about Georgia, then suddenly it's about Alabama for a chapter, and now it's back to Georgia. So now we're going to settle things on Monday night next week. But yeah, just coming into the game, I thought this game was going to be so entertaining. I thought it was going to come right down to the wire, and it just was anything but that. From just coming out of the gate, Michigan was just thoroughly dominated.
Yeah, Brock Bowers showed that, hey, if he wants to take advantage of the Caleb Williams model and put himself out there for the highest bidder, I think Brock Bowers will get a whole lot right now as what is surely going to be a first-round draft pick tight end. The guy is amazing. And he reminds me a lot of Travis Kelce with all the things you can do with him. You can use him as a running back. You can throw a short pass. He can break it out and go a long way. He can go up and go catch deep balls. He's just so versatile. And he showed that against Alabama, and he showed it again in this game against Michigan. And not only that, Stetson Bennett had an amazing game against Michigan. He threw for over 300 yards, threw for 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. And I thought that was a very great redemptive game for Stetson Bennett as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I feel like, with Bowers, if he was a junior this year and draft eligible, he might even be the number 1 tight end taken. He's, that good. Just so immensely impressed with him. And, seeing Bennett have that bounce back game, I thought was so big for his confidence to be able to, try those deep balls, because that's what he's going to have to do against Alabama. You talk about Cincinnati, on the contrary, not being bold enough to take deep balls, deep shots. Bennett's going to have to hit some of those to Pickens and Bowers and guys like that in order to win this game on Monday night. And then also I was interested to see James Cook be the number 1 receiver for Georgia. So they got a lot of versatile players.
Cook is going to be a big player in the game against Alabama, because one thing that you can do against Alabama, if you have a stellar running back that can catch passes, that is something that's worked against aggressive Alabama defenses in the past. And James Cook in the pass game could be a huge X factor for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, and one thing that may help them is I think Zamir White's a good running back. He's never really become that emerging running back that you would expect or hope for. You can't confuse him, obviously, with a Nick Chubb or some of the other great running backs they've had. And that may actually help Georgia in this type of matchup because they're not going to commit to the running game as much.
Yeah, I think so. I think that Georgia's path to winning this game is not in running the football. It's in running the football enough to keep Alabama honest, but not as that being the main force. I mean, I think that Stetson Bennett is going to have to throw for over 300 yards and not have any turnovers for them to win this game. And I don't see someone like James Cook or Zeus White getting over 100 yards in this game.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I feel like, with Alabama, every time they lose, it always seems like there's a one or two big turnovers that kind of help the other team, or like a big play, that helps them win. But I also feel like to your point about Bennett having to play a clean game, I don't know if I trust him still, to have that last second drive. Like, I don't see, you remember what was it, 5 years ago that Deshaun Watson had that last minute drive with Hunter Renfrow for Clemson? I don't see that happening. Like, if Alabama's up by like 5 points with 2 minutes to go, I think it's over. But I think that, Bennett, they need to win the game like before like the 2-minute drill.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, Stetson Bennett doesn't have, from what I've seen, the clutch ability that Deshaun Watson had. When Deshaun Watson got that ball back and you'd seen what he had done in that fourth quarter, in my mind, I actually gave the edge to Clemson in that game, despite the fact that was a great Alabama defense. But it was because he was that good of a player and he had worn down the defense. Stetson Bennett, he hasn't shown that he can win that close game to me, where it all comes down to it and you're playing a great opponent. He beat Clemson 10-3, but he didn't even score a touchdown in that game. That was a defensive touchdown that caused that win. So, I mean, we don't know that Stetson Bennett can't do it. We just haven't seen him do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, when you see him at his best, it's always like it's a blowout. And you want to know, like, can he operate with the same efficiency when it's a tight game? We know Bryce Young can Bennett. And I think that's the big question mark. And then obviously, everybody has the elephant in the room with Kirby trying to beat Nick Saban and Georgia, trying to get that monkey off their back.
That's right, Joe. I mean, the psychological aspect of it is the biggest one. And Joe, because this is our last chance that we get to gamble a little bit for the college football regular season, I think we should do our last Dan and Joe lock of the week. And Joe, I'm looking at this game. Of course, Georgia is a favorite right now at 3.5. I'm not betting on the spread on this one. The over/under interests me on this. It's at 49.5. And Joe, of course, if you're a Georgia fan, you would much prefer that it be on the under of this. But as of what I've already seen, the way both of these offenses are clicking, I actually think that the over is a good bet on this one. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think that this game is going to be scored in that. I think that you definitely saw a lot more confidence from Georgia's offense the other day. And I think that definitely getting the running backs involved is going to be a big factor. And I mean, I saw it last time. They didn't get any pressure on Bryce Young. Georgia did. After a week after Auburn had gotten 8 sacks against Alabama, Georgia had none. There's no chance of success defensively that way. I think that this game is actually going to clear the 49.5 over/under. So I like the over in this game.
Here's the weird thing about that pick, and it's almost like beyond a coincidence. The last time these two teams played 4 years ago in the national championship game, the combined total score was 49 points, 26-23. So it's crazy. And, that was kind of the offensively challenged game. So you're right. Like, if these offenses operate at all, they're probably going to exceed that amount.
Yeah. So that's my lock of the week on this. Take the over on the Bama-Georgia game. Joe, so we got over/under at 49.5, and we have now Georgia's spread has actually jumped to 6.5 now. Do we want to take a bet on the spread on this one, Joe, or which way are you leaning on this one?
I mean, that's a tough one just because I feel like it's going to be a one-possession game. I mean, there's a part of me that could see Alabama winning by 2 touchdowns. Like, it wouldn't shock me.
Oh, no, Georgia's favored by 6.5, Joe.
Well, I'm saying, like, either way, though, I feel like it's going to be a one-possession game.
Okay, that's what you're saying. All right.
Like, I'm saying, like, a part of me could see Alabama winning it by a couple of scores, but I feel like more than likely it's a one-possession game. But I actually kind of see it tighter than 6. Like, I feel like it's probably going to be like a 3 or 4 point win for whoever wins it.
Okay. All right. So you think that laying the points on Bama is a good call on that? You don't see Georgia winning by 7 or more?
I don't. I would be surprised.
All right. Well, Joe, I mean, here's the biggest factor that I have. We looked at, a lot of numbers, 49.5, 6.5. Here's my number, Joe, 3.5. I think that if Georgia exceeds 3.5 sacks, AKA they sack Bryce Young 4 times or more, they win the game. but they have to get at least 4 sacks on him, because if it's under that number, then Bryce Young is going to have himself a day, and I think it's another Crimson Tide national championship.
Yeah, no, I can see that. This is what I think happens. I think in order for Georgia to win, like it needs to be a close game either way. Like these teams know each other so well. Like I think that I said earlier, Bennett cannot be trusted, I think, to lead that last second drive. And so I kind of see the pathway for Georgia to have like that 4-point lead for against Alabama, where it makes Young have to score a touchdown. And you see Georgia's defense in like the 2-minute drill have to step up and get a stop. That's kind of what I see happening for Georgia.
Well, Joe, I think that if Georgia's going to win, you got to see another stellar performance from Nakobe Dean. You saw what he did against Michigan, and as much accolades as Jordan Davis gets and Nolan Smith get, Nakobe Dean's the heart and soul of that defense. And he played excellent, got an interception, a lot of big-time plays and sacks and that. And I think he's going to be important because they need him to spy on Bryce Young. They need to make sure that Bryce Young doesn't get any rushing yards, doesn't escape the rush. And I think that if Georgia wins, you're going to see a game where Nakobe Dean gets 10-plus tackles and maybe gets a turnover.
Yeah, no, I think he's just such a vital player for this team, kind of captains like the defense in many ways, trying to stop, Robinson and the running game. Yeah, so kind of my prognostication of how the game could play out. Like I said, I think that Georgia has to obviously, rely on their defense. I think they got to avoid the turnovers, to your earlier point. They got to win that turnover battle. Like that's so crucial against Alabama. We've seen it through the years. I think that ultimately we talk about the psychological factor. I feel like the script is kind of flipped here, interestingly. Suddenly Alabama's the team having to beat Georgia twice in 1 year. And that's kind of unprecedented for Alabama. I don't remember a situation where they've had to beat a team twice in 1 year. And so because Georgia's so motivated, I think that Alabama is going to fall, just short of being able to beat them. I think Georgia's going to get out of there with that coveted title they want. I like Georgia, I think, by 4 points.
Okay. All right, Joe. 4 years ago, I watched an Auburn team in person. My wife was with me. We were in Jordan-Hare Stadium. I've never seen an Auburn team destroy a Georgia team the way they did. It was beautiful. It's probably my favorite Auburn game I've ever been to. Auburn goes in the SEC championship game 2 weeks later after beating up on Alabama too. They beat number one teams back to back. They played Georgia a second time, and Georgia came out and toasted Auburn. Auburn had a chance to get a 10-point lead early on, didn't do it. And Georgia took advantage of it and really shut down that game from then on and really put a hurting on Auburn. And that just goes to tell you it's tough to beat a Kirby Smart Georgia team twice in one season. But then you parallel that with the huge psychological advantage of which Alabama has over Georgia, where they've beaten them a few times lately, where Georgia arguably had the better team. And I think this season definitely have the better team. And Joe, I think that Georgia is going to play inspired. You're not going to see another 42-24 type game where Alabama runs roughshod. But here's my prediction. I think that Alabama, because they have the strength of playing in all these close games and winning them, being in Jordan-Hare Stadium, down by 10 points in the fourth quarter, coming back, getting that Heisman-winning drive, holding LSU when you kept giving LSU the ball in your territory, stopping Florida from getting that 2-point conversion. This is a strong mentally fit Alabama team. Georgia's won one close game this year, and I think you're going to get it. Georgia's going to be in a tight game. Alabama is going to get up 31-28. Stetson Bennett's going to get the ball back. And I actually think that he's going to succeed, Joe. I think he's going to get them into Alabama's territory. But then all of the demons that come out with Georgia football for 40 years is going to manifest themselves one more time, and the Georgia kicker is going to miss a field goal to tie the game, and Alabama wins 31-28.
Well, there's not Blankenship kicking, and so that would make me, nervous if Georgia needs a field goal. It's not as trusted of a kicker, in my opinion. I'm going to say Georgia wins a very similar score. I was actually thinking before you mentioned that. I like Georgia 31-27. But, I'll say this. If you go either way, you feel like both teams know each other so well. And I think we'll be treated to just what will be a very memorable game one way or another.
I think so too, Joe. And, I wouldn't, this game, I wouldn't be shocked if Georgia wins. I definitely think it's going to be close. if I didn't have that history there, and then what happened after I picked Georgia last time and put myself on that island right there, I just don't know that I can do it again. I feel like whenever I pick against Alabama, it goes wrong. So we'll see what happens. But I think that you're definitely not going to see Georgia lay another egg. And I think we're going to have a fantastic championship game. And I know it's not going to be one that appeals to the rest of the country. And of course, it's tough for me because it has my two biggest rivals in this game. But I do think you're going to see the two best teams playing each other, and we're going to be treated to a whale of a championship game.
I think so too.
All right, with that being said, we appreciate everybody listening to our whale of a show, and tune in next week. We'll be back next Wednesday, and we're going to have we're going to have this episode and the other ones uploaded on YouTube. Check out our YouTube channel. Listen to all of our episodes on Spotify. Look up the Dan and Joe Sports Show on Spotify, and you can also follow us on Twitter at DJ Sports Show. And as always, I'm Dan.
And I'm Joe.